welcome everybody. I'm Lukas Heppler, and ever since researching on open source software communities at university, I've been fascinated by the power of the crowd. I've served as the technical product owner for the Swiss e-voting system before co-founding Bug Bounty Switzerland, where I serve as Chief Product Officer. And the goal of this talk today is to tell you a little bit about how we approached AI as a startup, the lessons we learned, and some insights and reflections about that. So very shortly, what do? We have hackers find vulnerabilities for a reward, and we do it at scale, with the vision of sourcing vulnerabilities from ethical hackers to become a commodity. This means we have a big funnel, we generate a lot of data. The data is pretty sensitive, and we're trying to make sense of it and turn it usable and actionable for our clients. And let me take you back to the beginning of our AI journey. We were at the company offsite when the news about the research preview of ChatGPT broke. And when I was sitting at the table for lunch, I did what everybody did at that time. I made it rhyme, composed a song, and let it talk like a pirate. And a lot of others did, and they started using it. Adoption went through the roof. No day passed without people finding novel ways of how to use the models and where it's good at and where it can do something new. And the underlying models turned out to be good at many things, not just rhyming, like pretending to be a virtual machine, writing code, or finding bugs or fixing vulnerabilities in the code. In summary, people were using the models in ways and applying it to domains the creators of the models didn't explore yet. And that allowed for a new paradigm. When we look at traditional machine learning, you start by collecting a lot of data, then you need specialized skills and a lot of resources in order to train a model, and then, and only eventually, you turn it into a product like ChatGPT. But the accessibility to large language models allowed to inverse that process. You could create a product with a generic model inside. If it was successful, you would start collecting data, and then, and only eventually, you would go to either fine-tune an existing model or create your own one. And it helps to solve a chicken and egg problem, because previously, you needed distribution in order to get data and create a model, but in order to attract users, you needed a good model. But those models were now available. Since ChatGPT came out, we have been trying it out, finding use cases, validating them in our domain of cybersecurity. And we had an existing product, user base, and data, and we're also trying to figure out how we should approach this topic at our stage of the startup. When the underlying models became available as Azure OpenAI, we started creating our own internal chatbot, enriched it with our internal company data context. But when Azure OpenAI became available in the Swiss data centers, we thought, now it's really time to ship something to our customers. So we called for a company internal hackathon. The idea was simple: to ideate, develop, and ship a use case all within a single day. That time constraint was completely arbitrary, it just made for a good clickbait title for our blog. And the rules were simple. It should be a feasible use case, something large language models are known to be capable of or even good at, and it should have a noticeable impact and serve our customers. And when we were discussing the final use case we wanted to pick over our morning coffee, we quickly settled on the use case of summarizing vulnerability reports in a human understandable way. And the reasons for that were it's semi-structured data, and we and our users look at a lot of those reports, and we look at them a lot. So all we needed was a report. Here we have it. We needed to do some pre-processing in order to strip the formatting, and we needed a prompt. We got some inspiration online, and we started with a really simple zero-shot prompt. Some summarization rules followed by the full text of the vulnerability. And the results were pretty good. Actually, straight out of the box, around 80% were usable. And that was okay, as we haven't really done any real prompt engineering yet. But the hackathon was actually also about something else. It wasn't just about cobbling together a use case just to have it. but to implement it at the core of our platform and make it part of our DNA. Because with the possibilities around large language models, also a lot of problems came up, but also solutions to that problem and a whole new tech stack. And it was everything from storage in vector databases to hosting of apps and models to observability through monitoring and logging. And at the core of that is AI orchestration. It's the glue which combines all the tools and solutions of that new ecosystem. And it builds a bridge between the LLM world and your code base. So what does AI orchestration do? What every good framework does, it makes your life easier and helps you manage models, prompts, and connect to the other tools of the ecosystem. But it also provides an abstraction layer and avoids vendor lock-in. Because the dominant models of today might be forgotten about tomorrow, or domain-specific models in your sector might come up, and you want it to make as easy as possible to change. But it also provides solutions to commonly occurring problems, like, for example, memory for conversational chatbots. At the time we picked our AI orchestration framework, LangChain and semantic kernel were the dominant ones. We have seen Microsoft successfully employing semantic kernel in their Copilot stack and producing a lot of production apps. As it fit our tech stack nicely, and natural language processing wasn't at the core of our application, and a couple months later, our tech stack evolved, while we found that semantic kernel was really useful and serving us well for realizing the use case in our application, we needed a sandbox to try out new things and to streamline our workflows from development to production. So we added prompt flow to our tech stack. It's a no or low-code framework, which makes it really easy to explore and prototype use cases. You can develop them locally or in the cloud. And the question we have asked ourselves many times is, wait, is this prompt actually better than the last one we had before? And in order to answer that, we had to run the prompts over a data set and create evaluation and benchmark frameworks. So you might ask yourself, is it really that easy? And the answer is yes and no, but it's easy to start. And the key point is to pick the right use cases and evolve them. I think we can all agree that internal use cases are less risky than something which is exposed to your customers. Something which is generated by an AI but validated by a human has less risk than having the AI act autonomously. And there is actually a good chance that your current engineering team might be just fine to realize the first use cases, and we actually have all it takes to do it. What we found or learned is that actually perfecting the one use case was for us worth much less than the capabilities to iterate we have developed over the process. And don't get me wrong, you will face some problems, actually a lot of them, but there's a good chance others are facing them as well. So don't solve the others' problems others already did or will in the near future. What we have seen, for example, is that chunking, which is turning a long input into smaller chunks before feeding it to a large language model, was a problem when we first started. Now it's a built-in part for every good large language model orchestration framework. You can just use it out of the box. And I think it helps to think about the API line. So an API, for everybody who doesn't know it, it's something you can just plug into and it just works, or at least that's the idea. I think everybody who ever developed software knows it's not quite that easy, but I think that's the general concept. And the question you need to ask yourself is, how big of a commodity, that's on the right of the API line, is it for you? It means the later you will get it and the more generic the solutions you have access to will be. But also, how much to the left can you actually move, given the resources you have and the job profiles you can hire? As an example, generic models are really accessible for some time now already. You could fine-tune them, but it took a lot of skills and resources for it, to the left of the API line. But in the future, or actually already now, we can see a specialized model, for example, for code and speech, coming up. So they're moving to the right and pushing to the right of the API line. The way software is built is changing, once again, and it will touch you at your core. You need to adapt to it. But don't forget to actually solve a problem. Solve it better with AI and not just follow the hype. You need to find your position relative to the API line. Think about how much of a commodity or competitive advantage it is for you. Consider this line is moving and manage your position actively. And as a last point, often forgotten, it actually not only touches your code base, but also your user interface. Firstly, users need to understand where and when they interact with an AI, and that outputs might be misleading or dangerous at worst. But also, the UIs, if you think about them, to adapt something an AI generated and turn it into a final draft, the UI might look completely different than the UIs we know today. So the primary UI of your application now might be the fallback UI of tomorrow. With that, I'm thanking you very much for sharing the stage today, and I wish you much fun at the apéro. Thanks.